Today on Home Studio Survival Guide, I'm going to be going over how to edit live drums. So earlier this week on my personal Instagram and Facebook, I put up a poll asking what everyone would prefer, and it was between doing an in-the-box guitar video or a live drum video. So I'm going to do two live drum videos, and one of them is going to be basically how to set up tracks for editing and how to edit. And then the video after that will be how I would go about mixing live drums. So today we are going to start editing drums. As most people who follow me know, I mainly work in Logic. I track in Logic and I mix and master in Logic. But when I edit drums, I export everything out and import it into Reaper, and then I will edit in Reaper, and then I'll export back out and import it back into Logic again when I'm ready to start mixing. A lot of reasons I do that, and I will go over all of them in this video. All right, now first things first, you're going to want to get everything as level as possible. Pan everything out just for your own listening, because if it all sounds like this, you're going to go crazy because everything is just super loud, nothing's panned, nothing sounds correct. So let's go ahead and pan tom 1 out, tom 2, floor tom, however the drum kit was set up. Let's pan our hats all the way over, pan our ride all the way over for the most part. And then I'm actually going to pull the ride down completely, hats down completely. I have a kick trigger track, pulling that down completely, snare trigger track, pulling that down completely. I don't need to hear those. It's just ticks. This is what it sounds like if you are interested. It's just a trigger on a snare drum, not ran through a module. It's basically just little hits. All right, now I'm also gonna pull my room mics down quite a bit just for right now. I don't really need to hear them too much. Then what you want to do is you want to make sure everything is in phase. In Reaper, you have these little phase switches right here. I already have my toms flipped, but I'm going to show you how to check for phase before you start editing. I'm going to loop a segment of the snare, and I'm going to solo out my snare top and snare bottom first. I know that they're in phase because I checked it in the tracking process, but I will show you what it sounds like if they're not in phase. So you can tell when I flip the phase switch on the bottom mic, everything gets super thin and it just kind of sounds bad. I will show you again, starting with them in phase, and then I'll flip it so they're out of phase. Alright, so we know the snare top mic and the snare bottom mic are in phase. Now we're also going to solo our overheads. I'm going to bring the overheads down just a little bit. Hopefully you can hear the difference there. I went ahead and flipped the phase on my overheads because I knew that both my snares were in phase. So listen to that again. You can tell when I take the phase switch off that everything gets very thin again. And then you'll go through and you'll do that with your room mics. You'll do that with your tom mics and the overheads. Just make sure everything is in phase and sounding good. One of the big things just to know whenever you're checking phase is if something's not in phase, you're going to lose a lot of the low end. So flip the phase switch, If it sounds like it's got more low end and more punch, leave it there rather than not having low end. Okay, so now I'm just going to play a segment of the song, and I'm just going to kind of get the drums leveled the way I would want to hear them. Just get it to where you're okay with listening to it like that for a long period of time. Sometimes I'll even go through and do a little EQs just for listening back, and then I'll take all the effects off before I export it out again. So now what you want to do is you want to group all of your drum tracks together. So in Reaper, you just want to, if you right click, you can drag along and everything is selected. Hit G, it'll group everything. Then over here, you have your grouping section. You want to make sure grouping is enabled. And then you also want to enable selecting one item selects group. So now, whenever you click anywhere on any of these tracks that's grouped, it's going to highlight all of them. Now I'm going to show you two different ways to go about editing in Reaper. They both have to do with slip editing, and slip editing means you can slip through the audio in a region. So say you were to cut in Reaper, you can hold Option and you can just kind of slip through the audio. Hold Option, drag it all through, and I'll show you how you use that to edit drums. Alright, so now that everything is grouped together, there's a couple actions in Reaper that really help you out when it comes to speed while editing drums, and this is the main reason why I use Reaper, because in Logic, one, you can't slip edit in Logic, and that is huge for me, and two, you can't do a couple of these key commands that you can in Reaper. So one key command is this right here. You have to download a extension called SWS. It's free. It's a free key command extension for Reaper, and it comes with a bunch of basically anything you would ever want to do when it comes to key commands. You can do it. This says split selected items at cursor with crossfade on the left. That is huge, because whenever you're slip editing or editing drums in general, you want your crossfade to be on the left of where you're cutting. So say, let's see where the first hit of this song is. There's some hi-hat hits. So these are slightly off. So this is basically saying wherever I click, my cursor goes. Now, if I hit Option S, it is going to put a 5 millisecond equal power crossfade to the left of my cursor, which is perfect. Now, if I hold Option, I can slip through this audio, and I'm just gonna lightly move it over so it's a little bit more on grid. I'm not trying to go crazy with it. And then I can slip this over, cut, slip that over, cut. So as you can see, my crossfades are going to the left of where I'm clicking every single time. And I made my key command Option S, that way my left hand never has to move, my right hand never has to come off my mouse. And I hit Option S, I let go of S, I keep holding Option, and I can just slip through. So everything just moves super quickly. So this is basically how you would manually edit a song of drums. You go through and kind of just slip edit the entire thing. Now, if it's more of a simple song that there's not a lot of double bass, there's not a lot of drum fills, which this song is fairly simple. So go to your groups and deselect the selecting one grabs all. So now what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to make a new track, which is Command T. And then I'm going to make this a folder track. Now I want to solo out my kick, my snare, and that's it. A lot of people will solo out kick, snare, and toms, but I like to do my toms manually every time because it's just more accurate. I like to edit all songs manually because it's more accurate, but I'm just going to show you a thing to do if it's a more simple song like a rock song or a country song. So now you have both of these soloed out. We're going to listen to this. And I'm going to turn that kick down just a little bit. Now you have these soloed out, and this is your folder track. Basically, it's like a bus in Reaper. And you can listen to this. Now, you're going to right-click on the folder track. You're going to go down to Render/Freeze Tracks. And then you're going to go to Render Tracks to Mono Stem and Mute Originals. Alright, and then once that's done rendering, it puts your stem track right here. We are going to take the folder away, the track we made for the folder. You can go ahead and delete that. Now what you want to do is highlight all of these. You want to put that stem track into your other grouped files. So all of those are grouped together now. Now in Reaper, go to the action list again. I'm going to show you another thing that I have set up. There's a dynamic split, and what a dynamic split does is it splits every transient that you have on a track. Because I put my kick and my snare into one track, it's automatically going to detect the transients for every kick hit and every snare hit. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to hit D, and this pops up. Now you can adjust your sensitivity, adjust your threshold, your minimum slice length. You can reduce splits if you want, but the main thing you want to adjust is your threshold. So we're going to go up to this track and just kind of make sure everything's going to get hit. There's a snare hit missing right there. We can bring the threshold down a little bit. It'll reload. Now it's there. So this looks like it's fairly good. There's one missing right there. I'd rather have some missing than have there be too many. So now you want to action to perform. You want to make sure you have split, selected, and grouped items. That's what you want. Now you want to hit split. Now you see it has split everything in the group wherever that was. Let's go ahead and zoom out. Now that we have that done, we're going to go up to our group and we're going to select one item, select group, go back to that. Now we can see everything has been automatically cut at the transient. Alright, in Reaper I have it set up to where if I hit 6 on my keyboard, it'll automatically change the grid in the background to 16th notes. If I hit 7, it'll change it to 16th note triplets. If I hit 8, it'll go to 8th notes, 9, 8 trips, 3, 32nd notes, and so on. I have that set up for me. You can set it up to any key you want, but that just helps me. I have it set up like that in Logic as well. That way I never have to go up here. I never have to find my grid anywhere and change the grid. You know what I mean? I can just hit number 6. But I know I'm in 16th notes. So I'm going to select this, and you can see the grid in the background right here. Those are 16ths. I'm going to hit eighth notes. Now, because I'm in eighths, I know I'm less likely to move these to a wrong spot. So I can right click, highlight whatever I want, hit Q, automatically there. Everything just moved where I want it to, and I'm going to leave those big gaps right now. I'm going to show you how to fill them in a second. I also want to turn off auto crossfade media items when editing. If you're going through and manually slip editing, you would leave that auto crossfade on. So right now, you just go through, highlight things, make sure your grid is right. You can kind of move some over, hit Q, and it'll put them right on grid. Put each hit right on grid. And you can pretty much do a whole song like this in like 5 minutes, especially if it is a rock song. This song is actually very simple, so I'm just going to go through, edit most of the song, and then I'll go make sure everything is correct, and then I'll show you how to get rid of all the gaps between it and get all your crossfades in easily. Now, spots like this, you're going to want to put your grid back into 16th notes. Split this, put it right on grid, and then put these right on grid, and then you're back to being good to go. And yeah, you'll go through and you will do this for the entire song. Now I'm going to just delete a segment of the song just so I can show you what you would do once you got through the entire song. So once you've done the whole song, you're going to highlight everything that you did. And then I have a key command set up for this that says fill gaps between selected items advanced. So I have everything highlighted. I'm going to hit F. And my crossfade is set to 10 milliseconds. Equal power crossfade. And what this is going to do is every gap that there is, it's going to pull it to the left and crossfade at 10 milliseconds. So I'm just going to hit OK. You kind of see everything switched. I'm going to zoom in, and let's go ahead and listen to this. Now, as you can see, there are some parts where the kick and the snare, where the drummer is hitting the kick and snare together, there's a little bit of a like flamming sound because the kick and snare didn't hit perfectly. I like my snare to be perfectly on. So you're going to go through and just kind of see where it could have messed up. Right here's a good one. So a lot of engineers do this differently. Some engineers will delete the kick completely and just not even use it while the snare is hitting. I like to go in and I will ungroup these two hits, group them together so they moved perfectly together, and then I will put this kick directly on. I know it moves it out of phase with the overheads and the rooms, but with kick it's not as noticeable. So let's listen to it this way. Now let's go ahead and undo what we did. I like that way a lot better. So then once I have that moved, I'll highlight everything and I'll group everything again. That way they're all together again. That way nothing can get moved by mistake. So I always go through and I check the song all the way through to make sure. Here's another one. Zoom in. I ungroup these. Those are good. And then I will come through, move my snare over to where I want it, group these together again, move on. There's another one. Where'd that go? Cool. So yeah, and that's basically how you'll go through and do the entire song. If there's drum fills, you'll go in, and as long as every track is grouped together, you're going to be fine. I showed you that way of editing, and now I'm going to go through and show you how to edit that same spot, but just doing it by hand, basically. And this is the way that I prefer doing it. I prefer doing it this way because all those little spots where your kick and snare are flamming, or there's a weird drum fill somewhere, there's no chance that you're going to miss it if you go through and edit manually. If you do it the other way, there's a good chance that you could miss something. Basically, it's the same concept, except instead of having your stem track detect all the transients and cut everything at once, you're the one making the cuts. Wherever your grid line is, so here's your kick drum. You want this kick right here to be right here on this grid. So you're going to put your cursor right before the grid and do your Option S, cut, crossfade to the left, and then keep holding Option to slide this over. And you're going to go through and you're going to do that for every single hit, unless it's already on grid. If your kick is early, cut to the left of the kick, move your kick over to the left of the grid, and you're going to go through and do this. I also like this because you can kind of see hi-hat parts that are a little off. And this isn't stretching anything. You're not going to get weird artifacts. Sometimes you will hear some weird crossfade issues, and you'll have to go through and move one of the fades somewhere left or right, but that's okay. And once you get good at this and you memorize everything, like where your hands need to be, you have things set up to where you don't have to move your hand off your mouse or your left hand off your keyboard. Everything just kind of feels good in a sense. It's almost like meditation. And it's very satisfying at the end to hear how it all sounds. Once you get really good at this, you can edit a fairly simple song in about 10 to 15 minutes. If it's a way more intense song, say, I don't know, something that's like tech death type stuff, this takes a very long time, sometimes hour to 2 hours a song. But it's worth it. Your recordings come out great. So right there, I switch my grid. I hit 6, switch my grid to 16th notes. These are actually very on. And I'm going to switch back to 8th notes. I just like my grid to be where I'm at. That way I'm not going to make a mistake. And now we will go back and listen to this. Now right there, you see when I moved this kick over, you can see right here where in that crossfade where I move the kick, this kick is in the crossfade. So you want to just hold shift, and you can move that crossfade to your left a little bit to where that's out. you would go through, listen to the whole song, make sure there's no little hiccups in your crossfade, make sure there's no clicks or pops anywhere, and then you would export your song. Before you export, you would open your mixer. If you did have any plugins on, turn all your plugins off. You would zero out all of your faders. Zero out all of your panning that you did, if you did any. Now, you will select all of your tracks, then select the entire song. I'm just going to select the part of the song that we edited. Go to render. Right here, you will select stems, selected tracks. Go to time selection. Pick where you want to export these. Then in Reaper, you want to click this thing that says wildcards, and you're going to hit the track. Before you export, also, you want to make sure all of your tracks are numbered and labeled in the order that you would like them to be when you load them back up. So when you select the wildcards that says track, it'll make sure everything is exported with the name that you have on it. You also want to check this little icon right here that says tracks with only mono media to mono files. That way you don't have a bunch of stereo tracks. Hit render. Now in the next video, I will go over how I would go about mixing these live drums. Thank you guys for watching. If you like what you see, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will have more videos out soon. Peace.